It's 2016 and we are scared as hell. Who's black and who's white and who would be put in a cell? Hi, I'm Raffaella Keshishian and I'll be presenting a slidecast on the lack of empathy between white and black Americans in the popularized OJ Simpson trial and Trayvon Martin murder case. On one hand, Orenthal James Simpson, best known as OJ, is a beloved retired football player, broadcaster, actor, and convicted felon. Referred to as the Juice, in June of 1994, OJ was arrested and accused of murdering his ex-wife Nicole Brown and her white friend Ron Goldman. With the most prominent lawyers defending him called the Dream Team, they fought for his acquittal and America went insane. On the other hand, Trayvon Martin was an African-American teenager strolling the streets of Florida at night with a black hoodie pulled over his head, a bag of Skittles candy in one hand, and an Arizona drink in the other. George Zimmerman, a man on duty in the area, felt threatened by this teenager and shot Trayvon dead. When Zimmerman was pronounced innocent in 2013, America went insane once again. The similarity between these two cases is the racial tension that was very significant during both trials. Black man murdered a white woman, and a white man murdered a black teenager. What both these cases lacked was empathy. Empathy is the gateway to insight. You cannot understand without seeing it from the point of compassion. You cannot perceive complexity and reality of a situation if you don't indulge in how every person in it feels. When comparing two well-known murder cases in America with a 20-year time gap, opinions and statistics of those who were active and lived through the 1994 O.J. Simpson trial will be collected from then and now, likewise as opinions and statistics on the 2013 Trayvon Martin trial. A very influential part of these cases was racism, and this will be documented and spoken about as well. As a result, America has not gained empathy nor progressed when it came to understanding the anger when it comes to the criminal justice system of people of other races. Described as the most publicized criminal trial of the century, the O.J. Simpson murder case was a criminal trial held at the Los Angeles County Superior Court in which the former professional football star and actor O.J. Simpson was tried on 2 counts of murder for the June 12, 1994 deaths of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and waiter Ron Goldman. The O.J. Simpson trial took place at a time of heightened racial tensions, especially in Los Angeles, just a few years after the 1991 beating of Rodney King, and those issues would prove pivotal to the trial as well as to response outside the courtroom. The head of the defense, John Cochran's jury summation mentioned Furman, proven to have repeatedly referred to African Americans as the N-word, and to have boasted of beating young African Americans in his role as a police officer. Furman was a witness for the people who discovered the gloves at the crime scene. Cochran called Furman a genocidal racist, a perjurer, America's worst nightmare, and the personification of evil. Fears grew that race riots would erupt all over Los Angeles and the rest of the country if Simpson was convicted of the murders, similar to the 1992 riots following the acquittal of 4 police officers for beating black motorist Rodney King 3 years earlier. At 10 a.m. on October 3, 1995, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. Marcia Clark, the head prosecutor, said nothing could save her case, given the prominent role of race in the defense's strategy and the black jury who heard it. There's no question that Americans of any color saw the O.J. Simpson case as a symbol of racism. Black people in specific saw through the lens of race, and that lens had been colored by their experience. Todd Looney, a black Los Angeles native, shared his feelings by saying the African Americans were cheering because black folks have always felt like the justice system was stacked against them. Lots of disenfranchised black people experiencing the brunt of police brutality probably found a lot of solace in this. Ronnie Duncan, who was working as a TV sportscaster at the time and was also black, said a lot of inner-city kids and adults are taught not to trust the system, not to trust police. As a young black person, you're going to be found guilty before any evidence comes out because you're black. It was like a match. It represented something bigger than the case, the battle between the white man and the black man. The tension was that level of intensity. However, when it came to the white Americans, most of them didn't understand why it was racially charged. A white citizen from Los Angeles was reported to say on behalf of a race that they didn't understand how people could defend him just because he was black. She goes on to claim that the black race knew he was guilty, but they defended him because he was black. It was weird. White people were not open to understanding why black people felt the way they did. These quotes demonstrate the lack of empathy the white Americans have for their fellow black Americans, and vice versa. In America, the criminal justice system is publicized for men of color to enter jail. The odds are stacked against black men in America. The incarceration rates disproportionately impact men of color, 1 in every 15 African American men in comparison to 1 in every 106 white men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. Many black men are often perceived as criminals. This is why the black Americans could not conceal their jubilation when OJ walked free. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, which is what the white Americans failed during the course of this trial, once the verdict was announced. However, this could be an argument for the lack of empathy from the African Americans. White Americans were upset because they saw the evidence beyond Mark Fuhrman and the racist card pulled by the defense, whereas it struck home for many of the black Americans. The lack of understanding and compassion built up from the tension between the two groups is definitely shown. Now, let's fast forward 20 years to the present time period. On the night of February 26, 2012, in Florida, United States, George Zimmerman fatally shot Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old African-American high school student. Zimmerman, a 28-year-old Hispanic man, was a neighborhood watch coordinator for the gated community where Martin was temporarily living and where the shooting took place. Zimmerman shot Martin, who was unarmed, during an altercation between the two that left Martin dead. Several media outlets, such as CNN and the New York Times, described Zimmerman as a white Hispanic in their reports on the case, prompting discussion and some criticism of the choice of that term. Barack Obama, the first African-American president of the United States, held a press conference on the controversy. You know, when Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago. And when you think about why, in the African-American community at least, there's a lot of pain around what happened here, I think it's important to recognize that the African-American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that doesn't go away. Black journalist Eugene Robinson wrote, Trayvon Martin was fighting more than George Zimmerman that night. He was up against prejudices as old as American history, and he never had a chance. For white people, they were not able to gain insight on the situation. Instead, they mocked the incident by dressing as a shot-down Florida teenager Trayvon Martin and his killer George Zimmerman for Halloween, then bragging about it on Facebook and Instagram. 3 Massachusetts youth, one of whom sported a Trayvon costume complete with a blackface and fake blood, are facing a massive backlash across social media. White people have been doing for hundreds of years deflected attention from our own prejudices by telling us that fear and depreciation of black boys and men are reasonable. George Zimmerman felt unsafe when Trayvon Martin, a black male, was walking in his area with a hood pulled over his head. We are all entitled to our fears, rational or irrational, but they are not a license to kill. This is what black Americans wish the white Americans could understand, but the white Americans could not empathize, and instead added salt to the wound by imitating the heart-wrenching controversy. Nothing hits harder than the idea that white and black people often look at the same facts and see different realities, which is what the two cases have in common. The Pew Research Center conducted a poll in 2013, a year following the George Zimmerman trial. The findings revealed that 78% of blacks reported that they believed that the case brought up important issues about race that needed to be discussed, whereas only 28% of whites felt the same way. These results suggest that Trayvon Martin's death had a different meaning for many African Americans than other groups, evidently displaying signs of apathy between the different races. Race is a social construction with no biological basis, whereas racism refers to a social system that reinforces a racial group inequity. In 2003, a general survey on effective reactions to racism, diary methodology, was used. The majority of the participants had strong affective responses, including sadness, anger, and fear. Many of the participants, around 50%, indicated that they felt sad, disappointed, and devastated by the shooting. 20% of participants reported feeling angry over the shooting and used words including furious, outraged, frustrated, and enraged. The anger reported was regarding the loss of a young African-American male and lack of responsiveness from police. This reflects Zimmerman taking action with his weapon despite being told not to approach Martin that day. These African Americans feel betrayed by the police force and not understood by other races. The truth lies within the numerical results from the anonymous surveys conducted based on racism in America. It is evident that the two different races are not even close to coming to agreement or sharing similar thoughts on racism and racial tension in their country. Since 1994, and the OJ Simpson trial and Trayvon Martin's death in 2012, it is easy to come to the conclusion in 2016 that black Americans and white Americans have not gained empathy nor compassion for each other, with the quotes and statistics used being more than enough evidence to prove my hypothesis. FX has released a new series called The People vs. OJ Simpson, educating the current generations on what happened in 1995. Oshan Deep 7 on Twitter reflects on the episode and says although this trial took place in 1995, it sounded a lot like 2016. Fortunately, America has progressed actively with with the Black Lives Matter movement, which was created in 2012 after Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman, was acquitted for his crime. In a day where equality still seems like a myth, there's still been some change made regarding movements and acceptance, but our capacity to empathize with feelings and thoughts of others needs work.